Hi guys, hope you all doing well. Welcome back to our channel, and in this video I'm going to talk about Microsoft Cloud App Security session control policies. And the use case that I'm going to discuss would be how you should block download based on real-time content inspection. Now if you're watching the series from the beginning, in the last video we have discussed about how you should block download on untrusted devices. Whereas the scope of this video will be knowing how you should apply content inspection as well. What exactly it means when we say protecting sensitive information. What are the file match settings that can be applied? What are the inspection methods that can be applied? And what are the different actions that can be applied on a typical policy or for a typical scope altogether? Okay. So in a typical environment, think about a user either working from home or working from office. But when we talk about user working from office, it is expected that he or she must be using the machine that you have provided. And you may be having any data protection tool or a solution deployed, or let's say you have endpoint DLP that can help you protect the data which is getting saved locally on that particular device, right? That means you are good with data protection. But when we talk about user using personal device, you don't know how that particular data will be sent or how that particular data will be shared with different resources because the device is something that you cannot control, right? A user is using a personal device. But the question now comes that how you should protect sensitive information in these kind of scenarios. Now think about like this. This use case will help you to cater exceptions that you have for your enterprise. That means, as I've said before, that blocking download is a kind of feature which is going to block everything. Okay, but we know that for every use case and for every scenario, there will be an exception, right? So how you should cater the exceptions, how you should provide a user experience to, let's say, your senior executives, which may need some general data to be available on their personal devices. And you can get this done with the help of this particular use case because you're going to inspect what kind of information they are going to download. If they are trying to download any sensitive information, obviously it has to be blocked. But if they are downloading any general information, then you can actually allow that information to be downloaded, right? But before you go ahead and understand how you can protect sensitive information with the help of MCAS, the very first thing that you should keep in mind that what is sensitive information. Now, if you have already implemented any data classification solution, let's take an example of AIP. Think about like this. Your 50 to 80% of task is already completed because you already know that under which conditions your data will be classified or your data will be confidential. That means in these kind of scenarios, you can just have a policy in place that says that if this particular label exists, protect this particular document or block download. Okay, but let's say you have not implemented any data protection solution or you're not using AIP. In this case, consider the same scenario wherein the user is trying to use a web-based session to access any of the service or any of the application protected by Azure Active Directory, right? Now we know that since the user is using a personal device, he or she can download any content that exists in either Exchange or OneDrive. I'm taking an example of Exchange or OneDrive, but these kind of controls can be applied to any application that exists in your Azure Active Directory. Okay, and in these kind of scenarios, you have to make sure that if the user tries to download a sensitive information, it has to be blocked. Whereas if the user is trying to download some general information, it should be allowed. But the question comes that how you are going to do this, right? In the most simplest way, you have to apply inspection on the file that is getting downloaded or inspection on the content that is getting downloaded. But the question comes how you will do it. Now this is something which is going to be done with the help of Microsoft Cloud App Security session control policies, because we know that for a web-based session, anything that's happening between the user and the service which the user is trying to access can be monitored and security controls can be applied. Now, this is something which we discussed in our first video when we were talking about what should be adhered by a solution to make itself fall under the category of a CASB solution, right? So let's say you are monitoring the entire session. or you are monitoring the entire activities which the user is doing, right? But then again, there is one more layer of configuration that has to be done from a data protection perspective, and that is moreover related to inspecting the content, right? Now, how it is going to happen? Obviously, Microsoft Cloud App Security Session Control Policy. Now, let's understand this with the help of an example itself. That let's say as a user, I'm trying to download a Word document, and this document contains general information. In this case, this download should be allowed, right? Because I'm not downloading any sensitive information, and I am a kind of a user who falls under the scope of those exception users, right? So since it is a general information, I was allowed to download. But let's say now as a user, I'm trying to download some information which is sensitive, or some documents for which there are certain keywords which should fall under the category of data protection. Or let's say I'm trying to download any document which has network architecture or blueprints or anything which even I am not supposed to be allowed, right? In this case, what will happen that as a user, when I will click on download, this file will be inspected with the session control policy itself, and the download will be blocked. And as a user, I will get a warning that this file download is blocked because it is not allowed by your enterprise, right? So this is what typically means when we talk about having real-time content inspection in place with the help of session control policies. And all this configuration is available on MCAS portal itself, even if you won't use AIP, which is Azure Information Protection. Okay, but there is one more thing which is very obvious, and that is all these conditions that you will be defining, they will be obviously scoped to different users and different groups. But think about the entity that you are controlling. That means it's the file altogether, right? Or it's the attachment which the user is trying to download. Okay. And if I talk about the attributes which are associated with this particular entity, the first one is extension itself, right? So the use case number one would be that I can have a policy in place wherein certain extensions will not be allowed to be downloaded, right? The next thing would be name of the file itself, right? So let's say my HR, legal, or finance department, they follow a nomenclature in terms of naming the files which are exceptionally confidential for my enterprise. That means I can have policies in place which are going to check that if a typical keyword exists in a file name, then it should be blocked. Last but not the least, and the most important one, is the content itself inside that particular file. This could be keywords, this could be PII information, this could be PCI information. In a nutshell, all the information types that exist or that you can see on protection.office.com or on compliance.microsoft.com are also available in MCAS portal itself to get binded with a policy that will be applied for a specific use case altogether. Okay, so in a nutshell, all the scoping that you will do for different users, for different applications, or for different conditions. Apart from that, you have this particular scope as well, wherein you're going to decide that what kind of policy should be applied in which condition. Okay, so now I'm going to switch to my browser where I'm going to demonstrate how exactly this entire process works in a nutshell. Okay. So this is my browser where I have signed in with my global admin credential. And before I go ahead and show you how to create a session policy for this particular use case, let me show you the conditional access policy which I have already created. And this is something which I have covered in our first video itself, where we were talking about session control policy, that you need to have a conditional access policy created first, and then you have to route this traffic to MCAS reverse proxy architecture. Now, what do I mean by this? That think about this particular conditional access policy as the first step that happens in terms of getting session controls applied. Okay, so what I'm saying is that I have scoped 3 users for these 2 applications, Exchange and SharePoint. In a nutshell, if these 3 users try to access these 2 applications and they are coming from browser on a device which is not hybrid or compliant, then apply session control policy. right? So make sure over here you have selected this option which says use custom policy. What does this mean? That once the conditional access is processed, all the traffic will be routed through MCAS. Okay. Now you'll come to MCAS portal, click on this third icon of control, and then click on policies, right? Now click on create policy and then click on session policy. Now from this particular console, you have to choose a template which says block download based on real-time content inspection, and then click on apply. Okay. Now if you want, you can customize these two fields as well, but these are common, as well as policy severity. If you want, you can customize. So let's say I'm going to save it as high. Okay. In the category, obviously we are implementing one of the feature which is more over related to DLP, so I'll leave it like this, but if you want, you can change it. Okay. Now this is the most important option, which says control file download. There are several other options as well, likewise monitoring, blocking, and controlling file upload with inspection, but since our use case is for download, I'll keep this particular option selected. Now, this is the category wherein you are defining the scope of this policy for MCAS controls, right? So as you can see, I'm saying that if the device tag does not equal to Intune and hybrid, then this policy has to be applied. Okay, but as of now, there is no app filter. So what I'll do is I'll add app filter. Likewise, only apply this policy to Exchange and OneDrive. Now, what does this mean? That if the user is not coming from compliant or hybrid device and he or she is trying to use OneDrive or Exchange, then apply this policy. But to be more precise, obviously I can add a user filter as well. Now, as you can see, I can choose group as well as name. Depending upon your requirement, you can choose any one of them. So let's say I'm going to select a group which I have already imported, and let's say I click on MCAS deployment. That's it. My policy has been scoped for a specific session. But as of now, we have not applied any content inspection settings, right? Now, this is something which begins from this particular section. Now, if I'll click on select a filter, as you can see, I'm getting 4 different options. Now, if I talk about the first use case that we discussed, that if you already have AIP in place, you can just have a filter applied. Likewise, if a particular classification exists on a document, then it should be blocked. Then you have extension. Then you have file name and file size. That means these are the 4 filters that can be used to scope a specific file type. Right now, this is the most important section, which moreover says inspection method. Now, as you can see, it is showing data classification service, but there are 2 more options. The first one is built-in DLP, and the other one is malware detection. Now, this is something which requires Microsoft Threat Intelligence to be enabled org-wide, right? So I'll click on this option which says data classification service, and if you'll click on choose inspection type, see, it is showing you the exact same set of options that you get either from compliance portal or from protection.office.com. That means I can click on sensitive info type and I can choose a specific sensitive info type that should be detected in the file which the user is trying to download. Now, this could be financial, medical, health, privacy, or GDPR, or in fact, any custom that you have defined. As you can see that it is also showing you to inbuilt fingerprint, right? Add fingerprints as a sensitive info types, or add a fingerprint condition in terms of just evaluating a large chunk of content. And then you have trainable classifiers as well. So what I'll do is I'll just leave it to sensitive info type, and let's say I select any condition over here, and then I'll click on done. Okay, now at this particular section you have already applied an inspection method, but again you can go ahead and customize the other attributes, likewise confidence level or accuracy or the number of times a particular instance or a particular content should match. Then you can have several other controls, likewise treating encrypted content as a match or treating files that cannot be scanned as a match. These are a couple of other options which are available, which you can apply. The last set of settings which are available for a policy is obviously test and block. Okay, so if I'll click on this, a user will get an email, and if I'll click on this, I can customize the message which the user will be seeing while he's trying to download any set of information. Apart from this, you can also apply AIP labels. Now, this is something which requires AIP integration with MCAS, and that is something which I will be covering in a different video altogether. But just for your information, in these kind of session control policies, let's say where you are not applying any classification label as a filter, you can apply a label or a protection while the file is getting downloaded, and then this section would remain common in every session control policy, wherein you can have an alert or a text message or a power automate flow defined. Okay, so this is the walkthrough about all the set of controls which are available for a policy altogether. Okay, now for this particular demo, I have already created two different policies which I'm going to show you now, and they cover two different type of use cases. Okay, the first one says that in this particular policy, if the user is trying to download any Word document, that means I'm scoping this policy just to go ahead and check a specific extension type, right? And as you can see in the inspection method, instead of selecting any of these, I have just said none. Okay, so if this particular user, which is enter or IDP, they try to download any Word document either from OneDrive or Exchange, then they will not be allowed. And now let me show you this with the help of the user account itself. Okay, so this is my different browser where I'm going to portal.office.com, and here I will be signing with one of my user account, which is a scoped for this particular policy. And let me quickly show you what exactly will be the user experience. Okay, so I'm going to type in my username, and then I'm going to type my password, and we'll click on sign in, and then we'll select OneDrive from the home console itself. Okay, so if I'll click on OneDrive, I will be redirected to OneDrive console. But what you have to make sure that the traffic should get routed through the CASB endpoints, or what should I say, CASB reverse proxy architecture. Okay, now the moment I will click on continue, I will be landed to the home page of my OneDrive, and here the expected behavior is that if I will try to download any docs file, it should be blocked. Now the reason behind that is because this is something which is obviously configured in our policy, right? So let's say if I'll show you the policy once again, it says that if this particular user, which is enter, is trying to access OneDrive and is coming from a device which is not Intune compliant or hybrid and trying to download a docs file, then it should be blocked, right? So let's say if I'll come back to my console, and if I'll try to download this particular file, this particular instance should be blocked, right? And as you can see, this action is blocked. But if the same user tries to download, let's say, a PowerPoint presentation, then this particular action should be allowed, right? Now, this is what exactly I was referring to when I'm saying that adding one more layer of sophisticated experience from a user experience perspective, right? So if I'll come back to my policy section, and if I'll show you the other policy that I have created, which has a different experience, in this particular case, what actually happening is the content inspection itself, right? So what I'm saying that if the user, which is SSO, is trying to access any application, it could be either OneDrive or Exchange, and he or she is not coming from Intune compliant or a hybrid device, then you have to apply built-in DLP. Now, when I say built-in DLP, as you can see, I'm getting a lot of options over here. But what I have said that if a specific regex is matched, then only the download should be blocked. Okay. Now here I'm not applying any extension condition. I'm applying a content inspection, right? So if I copy this, and let's say if I go to regex creator or any website from where I can test the regex. So let's say I go to regex101.com, and here I would paste my regex. What it simply says that if any file contains this keyword, then it should be blocked. And as you can see, this is what the regex says. Anything. Now it can be case sensitive, it could be anything. In a nutshell, if this exists in any document, it should be blocked, right? So I'll show you the user experience for this particular user now. Okay, so let me open a different browser, and show you what will be the experience for SSO. Okay, so if I'll go to portal.office.com, and here I'll sign in with my user account, which is sso@conceptswork.com, and let me quickly type in my password. And then again, we'll go to OneDrive and see what will be the user experience. In this particular case, the user should be allowed to download the Word file because it does not contain any confidential information. But when the user will try to download the PowerPoint presentation, in that particular case, the download should be blocked. Okay, so let me open these two files and show you the content first. Okay, as of now, I have opened the Word file itself, and as you can see, it does not have any confidential information, right? As well as this user is not scoped for the policy wherein I'm blocking a specific extension, right? So if I'll click on download, this file will be downloaded. But if I'll try to download now the PowerPoint presentation, it should be blocked, and that is what expected. And as you can see, you're trying to download confidential file which is not allowed as per the policy. And the reason why it is confidential, because it has that particular keyword which is supposed to be matched. As you can see, it shows here concepts work confidential. So this was all about knowing how different policies can be applied when it comes to data inspection. What are the different settings that can be applied? What are the different policies that you can create with the help of inspection methods altogether, right? So you can either choose built-in DLP or data classification service, whatever you want to have real-time content inspection. Okay, so let's talk about a quick summary of what all we have discussed in this particular video. We have discussed about the process and creating or implementing policies that can help you block download based on real-time content inspection. What is file match setting? Typically scoped to, let's say, either AIP labels or extension or file name or file size. We also talk about inspection methods available. Now this is moreover related to this particular section which says inspection method, and then we'll talk about what are the actions that are applied. Okay, so the last section of the policy was the actions itself, wherein you can define different custom controls that should be applied while any event match or any task match has been triggered. Okay, so if you think that this channel is helping you to learn more, please feel free to subscribe and share this video with your technical community. In the next video, I'm going to talk about how document fingerprinting works with session controls of MCAS. Thank you so much. Thanks for your time. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.